In a world obsessed with how AI will impact our workplaces, we've overlooked a bigger challenge: how we bring more humanity into them. It's a problem we've struggled with since work became a four-letter word. Work is supposed to suck. It's supposed to be drudgery. It's certainly not supposed to be a place where you can experience love and human connection. That would be crazy, right? People supporting each other, people trying to understand each other, people showing grace when someone struggles, people having normal conversations with coworkers instead of hiding behind buzzwords and false politeness. That'll never work. Except it does. And today's guest on the DesuckifyWork Podcast is living proof. Jēnna Reese started her company, Centric, back in 2009 with a simple mission: to bring a human-centric approach to the transactional world of consulting. And 15 plus years later, she's done just that. A successful, thriving business where people are at the heart of what they do. And their clients, who are people too, seem to actually appreciate it. It's hard to believe that people working with other people, serving the needs of other people, would benefit from behaving like people. But it's 2025 and apparently anything is possible. I, for one, am glad that Jēnna is at the forefront of this bringing humanity to work movement. And I think we'd all do well to join her. Okay, Jēnna Reese, welcome to the DesuckifyWork Podcast.
Hello, TJ. Great to be here. Hello. Happy New Year.
Nice to have you here, kicking off the new year. And before we go too deep into any of the desuckifying conversation, I'd love you to just take a minute and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you do for work and how you came to be doing it.
Definitely. So my name is Jēnna Reese. I am the CEO and founder of Centric. We are a consultancy based in the Washington, D.C. area. We focus on IT and technology. And how I started was I founded Centric in 2009. I wanted to build a consultancy that really valued human relationships and connection over kind of that traditional, transactional relationships that you find. Prior to starting my own company, I was a consultant for many years, and I figured I could probably do a better job at bringing maybe a more human side of the consulting or human side to the consulting world. And so I wanted to build a company that really focused on building authentic, genuine relationships, because I believe that you do better work when you're working with people you like. And so bringing not only the expertise, but that friendliness is really important, and that ability to kind of connect on deeper levels, not just at the work level. So a little background on how I started, or my kind of vision for Centric. And, I was really inspired just early on by my mom. That was really the impetus for being an entrepreneur. She had art galleries in the early 90s. And so she was, I would say, the earlier kind of woman-owned business coming out and building, multi-million-dollar art galleries, art branding shop. And I was able to see her build literally from the basement of our home to, more than 5 locations on different military bases and serving a wide variety of communities. So in my early teens, I was able to experience, that entrepreneur side firsthand, and that kind of strength in bringing a connection to the work that you do in that customer service.
Yeah, I think the entrepreneurship thing is interesting because you were relatively young to start your own business. I mean, I think, were you in your 20s when you started? Or?
I was 25. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that takes some guts.
Yeah. It's funny. I still remember the conversation I had with my dad. So longest but short story. My initial focus was Agile. So I was, trained with phenomenal early Agile adopters. So this is, 2004, 2005. And I guess right after college, so end of 2004, early 2005. And I was learning about Agile, specifically Scrum. And so I was going into organizations for the kind of first 5 years of my career, like the Washington Post, Freddie Mac. At that point, it was Washington Post, Newsweek Interactive. And we were rolling out Scrum to IT teams at the enterprise level. And so I was at a very early stage of my career learning about the importance of kind of like self-management and self-managed teams, and really trusting your team and your organization and the teams that are part of your organization to do what's best for the project. And so after a couple of years doing that, I had an interview with one of the big fives. I won't mention the name. And they offered me a job to come help them build their agile practice. And at that point, I was like, well, if they think I could do it, I'm sure I could go do this on my own and build my own company, And so I remember going to my dad and saying, I think I'm ready to start my own consulting company. And he is, Department of Defense, 20 plus years in the Army, and then, 20 more years with National Guard. And he was like, I think maybe you need a few more years of experience. And that did not stop me. I still went ahead, and I'm happy to say since that time, been working for myself and growing, my consulting firm. So it was a lofty goal, but I was definitely very, I don't know if it's persistence the right word, TJ, but I had a plan in place.
It was, you saw it and you did it. I mean, I think that's the thing that kind of gets me curious, because you get this offer with one of the big five firms, and for most people, it would be like, great, that's what I do. But your brain kind of like heard that differently, right? Your brain said, well, that's great. Now I know I can do my own thing. You made this leap like that I think most people wouldn't make. And it sounds like maybe your mom's history of entrepreneurship kind of guided that for you. I'm curious, you mentioned, your dad was a little, he's got a little more of the regimented Army background, and he was a little bit like, maybe stick with it a little. How was your mom when you said you wanted to start your own business?
Oh, I'm laughing because you're bringing back all these memories of those conversations. Oh yeah, she was like, good idea. I know exactly what you need to do. Obviously you can do it. And I will say my dad never said you couldn't do it. It was more of like, maybe you should go get a little 4 years experience under your belt before you start consulting and I guess providing advice, which is what consultants do.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mom was definitely, the dreamer that's like, hey, you could do anything you put your mind to. And so I would say, I think for sure, both of those, just influences is the reason why I was able to do what I do today. That ability to dream, but also that ability to be a little bit more regimented in those dreams is very important.
Yeah, it's a nice combo. So you've got this pretty cool work history from, kind of starting, when you were young and then doing your own thing. I'm curious, for you, what role does work play in your life?
Yeah. So what does it play in my life? It's, obviously a very important part, Connect Centric for a very long time. I wouldn't say it was my identity, but it was kind of my baby. Like most founders, I was literally a solopreneur for, the first 4 or 5 years of my company. I had my first employee, my first team member in 2013. So I was on my own for about 4 years. And so, I'm nursing Connect Centric. I'm really focusing on what is the vision and the strategy. And, I was lucky, in those years to have, a lot of clients that came and needed the type of expertise I was able to bring, that wanted a different approach to consulting, right? They were kind of burned out with that very transactional, I don't want to say kind of, butting heads with the consultant that comes in, but it's really saying, how do you provide a better service, which is more about guiding your clients, meeting them where they are and guiding them to improvements that they're trying to make. So, so I would say that was a big part of kind of identifying that Connect Centric was a part of my identity, but not letting it become all of who I am. But it's a passion for me. I love the company. I love what it stands for and what it's doing.
So you've got this approach that's more human centric, and I can align with that. I'm wondering if there were any experiences along the way before you started your own thing that kind of triggered that desire for you. I mean, did you have a particularly sucky work experience at some point that was not very human centric that maybe said, I don't want that?
Yeah. So the example that I can remember and why I wanted to start my consulting firm was actually, and I won't reference any specific companies, but it was during the big automotive bust in 2008. Was it 2008? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember watching CNN, when before everything was breaking news, right? So it was watching CNN, and this person, this man who'd been working for the company for 40 plus years, just got laid off, notice given. And I remember just the shock and the look on his face that this company I was so loyal to for so many years could do this. And it literally it triggered something in my brain, TJ, where I'm kind of like, when I have my own company, I understand that sometimes things like that happen, but if I can just provide as much notice as possible, as much humanity as possible, that there will never be an incident where I have a team member that just is shocked when things like that does happen. That's one thing I tell people. It's like, I can't guarantee anything, right? No one can.
Yeah.
At any company, but what we can do as leaders is the way that we have those conversations and the way that we provide that notice to understand that this is a huge part of people's ability to provide the livelihood for themselves and their family. So that was the one for me was my own company. I'm going to do things vastly different in those hard cases.
So what I wonder, and I imagine maybe folks listening are wondering, when we talk about bringing a more human side to work, one, I think you may hear that a lot. People say we're trying to make work more human, but what does that really mean? So are there some examples of what that means for you at your company and how you help bring that into the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's truly part of the fabric of what our company stands for and exists to be and is. So even our logo, for example, if you look at our logo, it's Connect Centric. So technically they're kind of two C's, but they are in the shape of a heart because everything we do, we come first from a place of just care. You could bring expertise, you can bring intelligence and all of your technical know-how, but if you have that connection to understand that, hey, you're TJ and you are running this awesome podcast, but you're also these 20 other important and amazing things. That is the way we show up, is just the way we not only consult our clients, but also see them as more than just our client, understanding that this is a person that's currently struggling with this, or maybe, something at home that happened, right? That they're working through. And that allows us to show up better for them because we know that, and this is what I kind of reference, is if we can alleviate the stress that they have at work, then it gives them time to focus on the more important stuff, which is at home. I need to get to my children's soccer game. I want to make the recital. I want to be able to go visit my, aging parents. They know that work is handled, then they're more likely to go do them. That is what we as a firm, as a not just a consultancy, but just as an organization want to provide, what we do provide to our customers.
It seems like it's really rooted in the values of what you believe. And then what I wonder is, so you have to go out and attract new business just like any other business. And how do folks respond, and are they drawn to this sort of human-centric thing? Is that what creates the conversation? Are they skeptical? Are they like, what do you mean? I've never seen that before. How are people responding when you tell them how you like to do things?
Yeah. So, TJ, I really appreciate your thoughtful questions because I would tell you, it is a challenge. It really is a challenge. I would say what I'm starting, or what I found and what I've learned is that the right client, the right customers will align with those values, and the wrong ones, the ones that may be more transactional, which is not wrong, right?
Yeah.
don't align to that. So when you say, are they skeptical? I had a phenomenal who, if he's listening, you are amazing, phenomenal executive coach. And he was in the PE world. And so whenever I would tell him kind of this vision, he got it, but it was also like, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
What do you mean? So if you bring this stronger relationship, you're going to do better work, but how does that equate to the metrics? What's the metrics around that? And a lot of times, as you probably know, you can't put a number around the human side of things because numbers, it's inherently are transactional. I can't tell you that by working with Connect Centric that you're going to be 2,000,000% more effective. But what I can tell you is when you start working with Connect Centric, you're going to be like, so this is how it was supposed to be all along. There's going to be, and that's what we find with our customers is just that kind of like we become the solution they didn't even know they needed. They didn't understand because they're so used to that just transactional, consistently like, what can you do for me? Versus how can we work together as partners, truly partners who understand you as a human being and not just a client. So there's definitely skepticism, and it's been an interesting journey. And I'm still very confident in that we're doing it the right way. I do know that we probably would be a lot bigger if I'm just like, hey, let's talk numbers, but I just I cannot, values wise, just the way I connect with, the world around me. I just do it. So
I feel like what you're putting into place is probably relevant to a lot of folks, because I think this conversation internally is happening for a lot of folks, which is, and maybe COVID kind of even woke people up to it a little more, because suddenly you were dealing with this whole other layer of stress on top of the normal stress of just being a human being in a crazy world, right? You now were a human being in a crazy world, and death was at your door, right? So it was like people really started to rethink that. But I think for a lot of people, and what I see now is people still, they want what I think you're delivering. Meaning whether they want that as their own business to be that way, or they want to go to a company that feels that way, or they want to be a client of somebody, but they don't necessarily see that. What they see, at least what I see, is a little bit of retreat from that. I mean, what I'm noticing is a lot of folks sort of in an emergency situation said, okay, we'll be more flexible, we'll do all these things. And that kind of created a more human-centric way of being. And then over time, pulling away from those things and going, let's go back to the way we were, which is the comfort zone of follow the numbers, follow the things that we know work. And I come from the advertising world, and we're seeing companies moving from, first it was 2 days a week in the office, now 3, now 4, and it's all kind of top down mandated and all that kind of stuff. And I think what you're left with is a lot of people just struggling, like, how can I exist in the workplace in a way like you're kind of describing, where my humanity is not only sort of respected, but valued and understood. So if I'm somebody just out there in the world, whether I have a job or I'm starting a business, do you have any words of wisdom for folks who are trying to connect to the human side of work a little more?
That is, what would my advice be? I kind of going back to your point about everyone's kind of retreating back to the way things were. I love reading about the brain and, brain neurons, and there's, 2 synapses, and you strengthen one or the other. And I think it truly is this need to continue strengthening the other neuron that says, this is the way it's supposed to be. I'm comfortable going in this direction. I'm comfortable going to the office 5 days a week. But the pandemic showed us that you can still be productive and you can still make a lot of impact by not going to the office every single day, right? And you can do a lot, and you can build relationships virtually. You may have to, be a little more intentional about it, but it's possible. And so I think what I would say, my advice would be, is to not give up. Don't go back. Don't retreat because it's comfortable or it's easy. You've got to keep on pushing through. Or what I've started to say is, go around, not through. Maybe you find other avenues or pivot a little bit. Maybe you can't get that from your work. Maybe you're in the world, I know a lot of times in some of the like PE financial world, right? It's about the numbers, right? So maybe that world just can't support, that level of kind of human, not say human interaction, but that humanity maybe.
Yeah.
And so finding other avenues to fulfill that passion for you and to fulfill that need, and not trying to get everything from work or out of work, because it may not. But if you are in that instance where it is possible, I would say keep on pushing, keep on, keep on working through that.
Yeah. And I think maybe your example of your own career choices can be a bit of an inspiration, meaning you decided to create something. I'm 25 years old, you got a few years of experience under your belt, and I'm going to create a thing. I've seen enough. I know what I like and what I don't like, and now I'm going to go do it. And not that everybody has to go create a thing, but to maybe recognize a level of agency that we don't always think we have, right? Like that took a sense of agency to say, I'm going to start my own thing. And for some, it might be what you're talking about. Like, well, maybe I don't want to work in PE anymore because I value a more human-centric thing. And maybe that world just can't exist like that, or at least it doesn't now. Or maybe somebody says, I'm going to start a more human-centric PE firm. And what does that look like? I mean, we talk a little bit about the numbers, and I think a lot of it is hard to tie. But one thing I have seen on kind of an employee engagement level, which I think at least connects somewhat to the idea of being more human-centric. When employees are more engaged, there is an increase in profit and productivity. So on some level, we know that this works. On top of it, like just being like feeling better, it works. And yet, there's some resistance there. And that's a question I wonder, like, what have you noticed when people are resistant to the idea of more sort of human-centric work approaches? Like, what are they afraid of? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I have my inklings.
Yeah.
There's so many different things, different reasons. One I have seen, kind of firsthand, is just this idea, right? This idea that's been kind of reiterated year over year, that you separate work and life. Like, your work life is separate from your personal life. But let me tell you, as someone who went through divorce, when you're going through divorce and trying to run a company, there's no separation, right? Or you're going through some significant, it's all together. And I think that's the fallacy that the pandemic showed us too, not to keep talking about that, but it's like that it is combined, that it is together, that when you are going through a trauma, whether it's, a sick significant other, or you lost a loved one, and then you go to work the next day, right? I mean, it's impossible. And I think that's what people are waking up from, is that it's not realistic, and it's healthy, and it's not how we as human beings, as just, inherently a social species, is you can't compartmentalize no matter how hard you try. And so I think what we're seeing is people that have tried to compartmentalize because that's what they've been told or taught to do, are it's not working. And so there's more to it. And you kind of see this in this next generation, like the young kids. Like, I'm in my mid 40s now, 42.
Yeah.
And I'm so in awe of like my niece. She's in her early 20s. And let me tell you, she has her boundaries. She has her expectations. And I love seeing it. I love seeing that shift, that change that's happening, because they have not, their whole life had to reiterate it. You work from sun up to sundown. If your employer needs you there, you're there. Doesn't matter what else you have going on, which I think was very much the way it was communicated, years ago. For
sure. Yeah. It is really interesting to see the younger generation hold those boundaries. And what I think is interesting is it's a really interesting challenge for those of us who are older. And, there's these tensions that come up, right? It's like, well, I had to go through it, so you should have to go through it. I think hopefully enough of us sort of can resist that side of our brain and go, maybe we can actually learn something from these kids. And wouldn't it be nice? Like, if I had some boundaries in my own work life, and And I also like this idea of the compartmentalizing that you talked about. Like, I feel like maybe that can be part of what contributes to the burnout we see, because we're basically like putting this wall up around ourselves. I'm at work and but meanwhile, there's all these forces of our real life knocking down that wall. And it's like, at the very least, you're at work and you're hearing the knocking on the wall. And then eventually sometimes it breaks through and suddenly you're filled with the emotion of the divorce you're going through, the sick parent, the whatever. And if you have to feel like you keep building that wall, how much energy are you exerting just to exist at work, as opposed to what you're talking about is, okay, I'm coming to work with some stuff just like everybody else is. Maybe my stuff's a little more challenging today. Wouldn't it be nice if a place understood that, knew how to respond to that, and help us all navigate that? Like, oh, TJ has a sick relative. How can we support him for a bit here? We know he's going to come back and support us when we need it. Like, is that stuff really explicit in the way you're running your business, or does it just emerge kind of naturally?
Yeah, so I would say it has happened both ways. And when you were saying that, kind of made me envision elephants. I love elephants, and how stories are heard. When one of the elephants are giving birth, and how once the baby comes, they all surround.
Yeah.
So what I would say in specifically Connect-Centric's instance is it's both. From the start of the interview process, from the way I talk about Connect-Centric in the job description, right? It's all around that human side, that empathy. And then during the conversation, it's always like, hey, and I say, I have a little note, but that, it has to be mutually beneficial, and that we as a company understand that work is a part of your life. It's not your whole life, and immediately from the day people come to work with us, we start reiterating that conversation. And then through the way that we as a team work together and support each other, it just naturally continues to expand to everyone, our new team members, the team members that have been there, for the longest. Like, we've all kind of support each other as we need each other to show up for.
It's such a simple, but I think powerful statement that you said there. Work is a part of your life, but it's not your entire life. And I think on some level we all sort of can see that, but yet when you step into so many workplaces, the culture and just the energy denies that reality, right? I mean, like you mentioned PE, I can only imagine people step into some of those high intense PE firms, and it's like, oh, this is your life for as long as you choose to be here. And even in advertising, like there was some of that sense of like you need to make this your life in order to do the best work and create the best stuff on behalf of your clients. And you need to just kind of be consumed by it. And I think anybody can probably do that for a year, okay. But it's not sustainable as a career, and it really mucks up the culture at a company. If you're trying to allow people to grow within your company, you're going to just burn them out and send them away. So I think having such a simple statement that not only has been explicitly said, but then is sort of lived in the experience, I think it might actually be a shock for some people. Like, I can imagine people who would maybe come from maybe even some of the big five consulting or anywhere where the feeling was a little more like, I'm all in and this is my whole existence and my whole identity. And then they show up at a place like yours and it's like, this is weird. But I don't understand. Like, are there people who actually like maybe need to adjust to that and realize what that means in terms of how they show up?
Oh, definitely. I have one of my team members who would share, like, Connect-Centric, he's worked with, larger consultancies, and how this has been the best place, best employer, best team, best organization he's ever worked with. And what I like to mention, and this is something my executive coach said, it's not that we're doing any less amazing work. All of my team members are senior level consultants. They bring a significant level of expertise, technical knowledge. we just come with that part of us that is human first, human centered. So we're bringing the expertise, we're bringing our technical know-how, but we're also saying, hey, my name is Jēnna Reese. I have 2 dogs, 1 dog. I unfortunately had to put down, who knows next journey. I say after 17 years, he was a big part of my life, and I'm also this nerd that loves sitting behind my computer coding and learning about, AI and I posted something about Notebook LLM and all the stuff that Google's doing, right? Like this is part of it. And I'm also building this amazing and growing this amazing company. And so that's really the difference, I would say. And when I think about what my team members tell me, that is kind of the message that continues to iterate back to me, is like, you're showing me that work doesn't have to consume me for me to be able to show you that I can do great work. So very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you're certainly modeling something that feels like people can then truly believe it, right? Because I think if you just say the words and they're waiting for you to kind of act in a different way, like, yeah, humanity, but by the way, can you work all weekend? And your kids have a recital on Saturday. I don't care. Like, then it's like, okay, that is an experience I think a lot of folks have, where there's the words and then there's the actions, and they don't meet. So I like that you're saying, well, I try to demonstrate it through my own behavior and opening myself up a little bit and sharing. The question that came up as you were saying that, like, there's the ability to do great work. And then I wonder if somebody's sitting there going, yeah, but does the person who maybe goes a little more like all in on being consumed by work, are they the ones who get the best opportunities or the promotions or that kind of stuff? How does that connect in your world, where the humanity and the human-centric thing happens, but also I don't need to steer away from that if I want to, like, grow in my career?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest kind of word I always use, or sentence or phrase, is mutually beneficial. I think that's what I would say has been missing, and what I feel like we're bringing is work, life in general, like anything, right? Relationships, they have to be mutually beneficial. And so when I say that we're all about the human side of consulting, we truly mean that. Like, we as a company need to provide that support, those abilities to grow, to learn, and you as a team member provide that expertise back to us, that commitment back to us. And so I would say it's not necessarily like the person who's working 80 hours or 100 hours a week is going to go up higher than someone who's working 45 or 40 hours a week. It all depends on, as a small consultancy, right? It depends on, like, where do we need help next, right? That's a big part. Like, where are we growing? We're big operations and process improvement mode right now. We're going through our ISO certifications. And so getting through the audit, we've got to be really, really strong operationally, right? And so I would say that kind of what you shared is part of the fallacy that was given. Like, in order to get promoted, you've got to work 100 hours a week. My question would be, if you're working 100 hours a week, do you want to get promoted?
You got to work 120.
Stop. Yeah, it's not gonna,
Yeah, so. I don't even know how many hours there are total in a week. Now that I'm thinking about it, I guess it's like 150 or something. But
you've heard horror stories. I mean, people do across the world like that. That is, 80s, 90. I mean, it's working till, burning the midnight hour. And I'm sure someone listening right now is probably on that train.
Yeah.
Get promoted and keep on going down that train. I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? There's something so innate in us to want to be recognized, as valuable, that if the only way to do it is to put in the 100 hours, then a lot of us will maybe try to do that, as opposed to what you're creating, which is like, there are plenty of ways to bring value, and it's not driven by how many hours you are here. It's like, where's the need? Can you support us in our latest efforts in some way? Great. You're valuable. You can do that in 40 to 45 hours. I think that's such a more helpful story. Not only because it prevents you from kind of burning out, but it's like, I could work 100 hours and like 90 of them could be on the wrong thing. But all I know is that when I work 100, people notice, and then I get promoted. But am I actually bringing value to the company? I have no idea. So to bring it back to, well, what do we need? What are we trying to do right now? Who are we trying to serve? What needs do we have that can get lost in the culture of just busy, 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 as opposed to being more human centric? You mentioned AI, so I'm curious because this is, I think, almost more of a cultural concern than just a work concern. But there has been this sort of massive movement in that world over the last couple of years, and it's unsettled, I think, a lot of us. It's like, well, what do we do? Like, you can see the good, and then you can see the potential stress and strain of it. How does AI connect into this human-centric culture that you've built?
Yeah, it's so great. I mean, AI is something that we use, and I say AI by like Gen AI. So, you know, you have common ChatGPT or notebook LLMs, all those like Gen AI tools. What I would say, and there's kind of there's many different feelings around this. You know, some people say it's going to only stay where it is today. It's going to stay very novel, right? Because consumption, it's too expensive to really, you know, expand anymore. You know, the environmental impacts that we're seeing, because it takes a lot of energy just to with demand. But I would say, and from my perspective as just a consultancy, you know, we have to stay on top of the latest trends, the latest emerging trends. And so for me, it's not saying AI is going to replace, it's really saying, how can AI help me work better and do better work for my customers, for my team? And so I see AI just like any other tool, you know, like Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Not as big, you know, pre 2020, and now took over the world. And hasn't replaced kind of that human interaction, it's just changed the way that we connect and the way we, and so I see the same thing for AI, is that, you know, will it replace jobs? Of course, there's going to be some jobs that AI will be able to do, just like there's, you know, across time, right? Computers replace people's jobs.
Yeah.
That knowledge that you have is so much more, there's so much more to that knowledge you bring to the table that AI can't replace. And so it's understanding that and then shifting your role to meet that, not letting it replace your job, but instead creating a new role for yourself based on that knowledge that AI can't bring.
Yeah, I think that's the side of it that sometimes we're blind to, that, you know, you use the analogy to computers, and it's like, yeah, computers did replace certain jobs, but they ended up creating so many jobs, because it's like, well, now there's more things we can do that we never even knew we could do. And that's sort of what it feels like with AI. It's like we're so new to it that it's hard to see, but like at some point the brains are going to start, like, we're going to start going, oh, I could do this thing. I didn't even, like, it wasn't even in my orbit because it just was impossible. And now it seems possible. Okay. And I think you're going to start to see a lot of that. It's not just how can AI do the tasks we've always done. It's like, how can AI create new ways of working and connecting and solving problems and all that just weren't even available to us? And then what are the jobs and careers and businesses that get created as a result, you know? So you had mentioned, you know, the influence of your parents in your work, and it's such a really interesting balance of, you know, your mom on the kind of creative and entrepreneurial side, and your dad on the military, a little more regimented, disciplined side. Has there been anybody in your work life that's been an influence as well, that helped you maybe see things a little differently over the years?
Oh my gosh. I would say I've had quite a few mentors, like true mentors. You know, I could count on one hand for sure, but there's been some significant mentors in my life.
Yeah.
Since being Connect Centric, that I would not be here if it wasn't for them. My early clients, you know, who, you know, I worked with from an agile perspective, gave me that opportunity to even showcase what's possible when you bring in a team like Connect Centric. That has probably been the biggest kind of growth and influence, is just people taking a chance on a small consultancy when it's easier, for sure, right? Yeah. I think I can say this. They always say no one ever got fired for bringing in IBM, right? So, you know, when they take a chance on a smaller consultancy, and then we end up being there for so long, because it's like, this is the way it's supposed to be. We're getting the value. We're seeing the difference. We're getting a higher level of service and expertise, because it's not just, you know, less experienced team members coming to support the work once the work, is
Right.
sold, right?
Mhm.
Just
Yep.
like we are all senior level folks that are working day in and day out next to our customers. And so I would say that has been a big part. And in my work life has just been the clients that have believed in this vision and have entrusted what we're trying to do. And we're just ready for something different.
Yeah.
They were tired of their projects failing. And so they're like, literally, what do we have to lose? And then we come in and we clean up shop, and so that is the message that we and I have always have to consistently give is like, yes, it's riskier to bring in a small firm because of the unknown. These other larger firms, know that they don't always provide what you're expecting, but you keep on going back. And so at some point, what can you do, right? At some point, you've got to sort of just say, hey, let's try something different and see, it's like no more insanity. Let's try something different with a firm like Centric and see what's possible when you bring not only the expertise, but also that human connection and human side.
Yeah, I think the more we can make it as inviting as possible for people to make those slight leaps of faith, right? Meaning, put a little trust in somebody that's maybe a little riskier for you, whether that's a company or a new employee, right? Sometimes it's like, I could hire this person or hire this person. This person's safer because they went to, Princeton and and this person didn't, but there still might be like value in taking that risk. I think, like you said, the IBM story, it's like, it's so easy to go down the safe route, the tried and true route, even when it's no longer serving us, because nobody's going to point at you and go, you screwed up for hiring one of those big companies. Like, even though the results aren't there, you're probably like, well, of course you hired one of the big companies. Hire another one of the big companies now, and maybe they'll do better. Instead of giving people that, what I wonder is there something we can be doing to encourage a little more openness to some of those leaps? You made the leap at 25 to do your own business, and clients are making the leap to come in and kind of trust you to redo things. I don't know if there's an answer to this. I'm just but I feel like great things happen when people make even those small leaps of faith and go, okay, I'm going to try something that's a little different here.
And I could tell you about my very first team member. I like saying team member instead of employee. That's another list of verbiage change. And this is 2013, and she had literally been out of work for like 3 years, not get hired. And I interviewed her, again, this is my first team member. So I'm a team of one. And we won my very first it was a federal government contract. And I had to bring a team member in for this specific role. And I remember I interviewed all these candidates, and she had the longest gap in history. And I just kind of talked like, what was going on, what happened. And there was just something about her, like literally, her name was Ginger. I'll give you her first name, but there was something about her. And I remember thinking like, there's other people on paper that looked better, but when you talk to them, I had 3 different candidates who made it to the final round. And I went back to her because there was something about just the way she showed up, communicated, the way that she brought this level of care, and she knocked it out the park. Obviously, we had that contract for years, and they actually ended up converting her to a full-time team member with the agency.
Oh, wow.
So, you talk, so that's
a great example.
That is what just fills my heart and my cup from knowing that someone who so many people overlooked for so many years was literally this amazing, amazing person, an amazing team member that provided a significant amount of value, because on paper, she kept on being looked over. But, and that's, I would say, my vision. And I would say what we do at Centric, we keep on being looked over. But the moment customers actually work with us, it's up. So that is how it was, this is how it's supposed to be.
There's something really beautiful in that story. Like, the way I heard it is that maybe you were the first person in years that like truly saw her, right? Like, she was showing up and she had this maybe not quite as perfect resume that was constantly, filtering the way people viewed her. And somehow, for whatever reason, you you connected with her in a way, and again, maybe this openness to more human connection and a more human way of being allowed you to kind of go, no, there's more here than what's on this piece of paper. The paper's fine. Like I imagine like it was good, but there may be others out there who had a more perfect resume. But like, and that's a thing, like, it's hard to measure that, coming back to like, we're so driven by, especially with all the automated resume systems and now with AI, I'm sure it's like scanning people's backgrounds in a way that may be like useful at like the very like slower levels. But when you get to actually like you're talking to people, how can you get into the mindset of how can I really fully see this person and see what they can bring to the table? And that's true with this employee. That's true when people come and hire you. And that's the same thing. I think it's like they stop seeing the smaller, not big five, not the safe choice. And they go, oh, I see you and I see your team. And so I'm curious from your perspective, does that show up for you where you can look beyond whatever the data, the numbers, whatever is saying, and when you're working with either your team members or your clients, that you're able to really see what's going on there?
I have a team member who always asks, like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I think, and again, I don't even know how to verbalize it, TJ. I just have this way of just getting to know people, like the human side of people, like even just the way I start conversations. I want to know about you. I don't know if it's just kind of nosy or curious, but, I want to know what you did this weekend. I want to know about, I think you have a cat running around back there, right? What's your cat's name? And so I want to know those details of just because we have this, first off, we spend so much of our time at work, but also like it's beautiful when you start to get to know people, you realize what you're missing out on by not having those conversations, and that's a big thing. It's just that wanting to connect. And I always, you're someone that, doesn't like talking about yourself and at home, we probably will not be a good partner for you because I'm going to ask, I'm going to want to know if you have a trip coming up and I know, I'm going to like, so what do you have planned?
Yeah.
We'll talk for the first couple minutes just talking about that, because at the end of the day, the work that I can do for you is going to be so much better if I know who you are and who you feel. And because you will always trust that I have, and my team has your best interest at heart, that we will show up every day, and I think that's probably the best way I can say, like, our clients know that we have their back 100%.
Yeah.
That, we're there to make sure, and everything it's not always easy, right? But we're there to make sure that when it isn't easy, that first, right? No, I have a old mentor of mine who's been my mentor for so long and a close friend, no trick bags. We never want our customers to be thrown in a trick bag, right? And so, that working with us, that you have a consultancy, a partner like that who is there to look out for you, who's listening, who's making sure that if there's a trick bag coming up, that you are fully aware of it well before it gets to you. And that's the value that people don't realize how important it is, that to have a partner that truly only wants you and is deeply invested in your success, whatever that vision of success is.
Yeah, I love that nod to listening, because I think we all think we listen, but we have our program that we're running, and a lot of times we're just blanketing a client or something with that, like, here's how we do things, and you're just going to run through it, as opposed to going like, no, what's actually going on for you, the full story, then I know how to serve you in the best way, not simply trying to like run you through the same routine that theoretically everybody else gets. So I love that. I think you just unlock so much more when you really get beneath the surface with people, and suddenly, like, sometimes even like the truer problems emerge, the truer challenges emerge by doing that, rather than somebody shows up and says, this is the thing that's the problem. It's like, well, actually, this is the thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I imagine some folks might be hearing this and going, this all sounds wonderful, but what about when things get really tough, whether it's another economic downturn or whatever? Can I stay in this place of human-centric approach, or do I have to just revert back to like, okay, it's all about the tactics and the numbers now? How do you hold it when the forces outside are making it more challenging?
There's no option. You have to, because the economic downturn is not going to be any better by reverting back to the old comfort of, well, we got to cut these 100 people. We got to do these, 100 things that we haven't done in years. But now, because we have this economic downturn, we're panicking. And so first off, this is what I was telling my customers, never make any decision from a place of fear, right? Or make a decision from a place of like, fire sale, we got to panic. One example I like to use, this is years ago. And it's a small, I think it was a furniture company.
Okay.
Something happened where they had to lay off a ton of employees. And instead of laying off, they went back to the entire organization and said, hey, if everyone just agrees to give up $100 or whatever their paycheck, we don't have to lay them off. And everyone agreed. And so I think that is the part, like, yes, layoffs happen, but I don't think they should be the first choice. I think a lot of times larger, not all organizations, right? But sometimes that's always the first choice. And so I think layoffs are the easy choice. That's always easy. What are some other ways you can pivot, modify, or, move people to roles? Can you understand maybe they have other strengths that may be better fitted in a better fit in another part of your organization? I would say when things get hard, that is when that human side should show up even stronger. It shouldn't be thrown, out the window.
Yeah. I mean, I think that example of the layoffs is like, in a place of fear, you would never have come up with can we take $100 or whatever it is off of it? In a place of fear, you're sort of now in that fight or flight in automatic thinking. And the automatic thinking is, okay, we're going to have a round of, 5,000 layoffs or whatever the number is. But if you can find a way through the fear to get to a place of, and I don't know what the right words are, hope and love and connection and all the good words, where you can start to see the full range of possibilities, suddenly, like, creativity has a spot at the table. You can't be creative when you're afraid. You're on autopilot, right? But if I'm now of a place of hope and possibility, what if we did this? Or like, what if we move those people over here where there's a bigger need right now, at least temporarily, and then we can talk in 6 months and reevaluate. Like, your brain can't get there unless you're in that mindset, right? I feel I'm excited for people to listen to this, and particularly folks, certainly from my industry of advertising, because I'm sure a lot of folks are going, God, we need more of that in the world, because it just, the fear response is so visceral, and then we just act on it as opposed to taking a breath and just giving ourselves a chance to let our more human, empathetic side to show up again and go, okay, what else is possible? It's very inspiring. And I almost, like, part of my brain is like, I feel like you could be a consultant for people who are considering being more human-centric.
Like, what does that mean? Exactly. That's a good point.
Because like some people are probably curious about it, but they're going to revert to their old behaviors if they don't know what that really means. So not that you are necessarily asking for a new business line, but I feel like just hearing you speak, I'm like, at the very least, there's some wisdom that you have that I think a lot of people could benefit from. And speaking of the audience, one thing I've been exploring recently is the idea of having our guest ask the audience a question. So do you have a question that we can put to the audience and see if anybody chimes in?
Let's see. Okay. So I've been coming with this concept around like work personas, and kind of goes into my belief that, work is only a small part of you as a person, and we all show differently and work for many different reasons. So I'd be curious to know kind of what is your work persona? If you were to think, are you someone who's looking for job stability? Are you someone who's looking for work-life balance? Are you looking for an organization that's aligning with your personal values? Are you looking for an organization that is going to consistently, give you a raise every year, but they don't expect too much else, right? Just kind of, here's my job description.
Yeah.
No more, no less. Someone who's looking for, and that's okay. This is okay too. Are you looking for that identity from your work?
Yeah.
Just like any hobby or any passion, like work can also be something that you find important to identify as part of, part of life. And so that would be a question for your audience, is to think about, like, what is your work persona? What drives you to do the work that you do? And as you listen to this conversation, why do you do what you do? And are you finding that value that you're hoping for in it?
I love that question. And it kind of takes, it builds on the question that I asked you earlier, which was, what role does work play in your life? But it makes it much more concrete. It's like, okay, here are some choices for that. Meaning I am a show up, clock in, clock out, get my 3% every year person, or my whole life is work and I want it to be my full means of identity in the world and all the iterations in between. I am very curious to see what people say. I definitely want to put that out to people. And I think what I noticed as you were saying it, it's like, you really have to think about it. Like, I don't know that we inherently know the answer right away. We just start working after college, and then you kind of wake up 20 years later and you're like, I'm just doing it. I don't know what work means to me. So I love the opportunity to pause and reflect in that question. That's really cool. Yeah.
TJ, do you have an answer for you?
I think my answer is in flux a little bit. There's definitely a lot of identity for me in my work. And I think what I'm exploring now is a little bit of what you're talking about, which is how to recognize the parts of that are most valuable and serve me the best. Like, what parts of my identity can and should flow through work, and what parts can and should be expressed in family relationships, friend relationships, my wife, hobbies, whatever else is out there. I think, again, as you've done this entrepreneur thing, and I'm kind of been building my business as a coach here for the last few years. You can get swallowed by it a little bit for a while. And I think I'm finally sticking my head above the water and going, okay, what stays with me here at work and what needs to go elsewhere? So somewhere in between, it's my whole identity and it's a healthy part of my identity is where I'm currently living. Yeah. What about you?
I was going to use an example. So I'm now remarried, amazing husband. And nice. One thing I learned in this journey is, this is kind of pre this marriage, is I think as humans, we always want to put identity in one thing. So you're going to be my confidant, my best friend, I want to go to this amazing winery. I know you hate wineries, but we're going to go anyway because I want to do everything with you. Yeah. And I use because I think work is very similar. Is you've got to find out, and you just said this perfectly, what part of work life. Wait, what part does work play in your life? Is it to get your identity? Is it because you love going in? Is it because you want a paycheck? I'm using that similar. Say work should not be everything, nor can it be. It's not realistic. Just like the person in your life or your friends and your relationships, there's not just one being for all of those needs. And so kind of clearly defining what your needs are. I need these 5 things to feel whole, to be happy or to feel successful, whatever those kind of adjectives are. And then finding those pieces and where those need to live.
I love that. That's a really, taking this exercise and really running it through any area of your life. Like, when it comes to your significant other, what really matters in terms of what parts of you get to be expressed in that relationship or in a friendship or in anything rather than, yeah, we do have that tendency of like, this person must be everything. And meanwhile they're miserable at the winery while, while you could be there with friends who would love it, and then you go to the basketball game together with your spouse, and that is a mutual love, for instance, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I once listened to a podcast. They call it shared interests and solo pursuit. So now what we do is, he may say something. I'm like, solo pursuit, which means you will have fun. I can't wait to hear about it.
I love it.
The shared interest where, we both enjoy doing that together. And again, this kind of ties back to this whole conversation. Again, that work and life coexist. And so, having that same thought, what's a shared interest at work? What might be a solo pursuit that you may need to, find elsewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. That's a really nice filter for assessing how well things are going in all those areas. Speaking about the work world, and one other question I like to ask is if you could wave a magic wand and create a more fully desuckified work experience for more people, what does that look like?
Ooh, that is, let me see, what would I would say, and I think it goes back to this mutually beneficial. It can't ever feel like one side has more than other. And let me just say that obviously changes depending on what's going on. You mentioned like over the weekend, I have a recital and there's an emergency at work. Well, 2 months ago, maybe there's another emergency at work and they missed a recital for whatever reason, right? Mm-hmm. So it's this ability to compromise and to show up from a mutually beneficial place. And so for me, if I could wave a magic wand, it would be that those sort of mutually beneficial either conversations have taken place or that you as a team member feel that you are in a place that is mutually beneficial. Like I always say, well, if I can't be getting more than the other, just that's mutually beneficial, right? And I think that what I find when people talk about how, the toxic work environment, if you're in a toxic work environment, it's not mutually beneficial. Like they are taking more than they're giving. And so what I would say is being able to see a world where everything is in a state of mutual, or comes from a place of mutually beneficial kind of outcomes for everybody.
I like
mutually
that.
Beneficial outcomes. That's it.
And I it almost again creates an interesting lens that you can kind of assess. Like, okay, I'm feeling off in this job. What is are both tanks equally full, or is my give tank, way fuller than the take tank, or however you want to make that metaphor? But, and
it fluctuates.
Yeah, there's some, it's up and down, but yeah, maybe it's more of a trend line. Has the trend relatively even, or am I just constantly having to give and not getting the things I need? And that even comes back to that work persona. What do I need? Being clear on what I need from work. And then I like the notion of having those conversations so that like somebody shows up to your company and you get a clear sense of, okay, these are the things they need to feel like they're thriving at work. Well, now I'm on the lookout for that, and I'll give them those opportunities when I can. And then they know what we need as a company and they'll give us that. Yeah, that's really cool. Are you optimistic that we can continue to hopefully create workplaces that are more like that and are more driven by human needs rather than just kind of the numbers?
110%. I am definitely, you can probably tell everyone listening, I'm a very optimistic, hopeful person.
Yeah.
Partly because I truly have seen it firsthand, but you really get back what you put out there. And so your brain believes what you tell it. So if you're telling it work is terrible and I hate it, it's going to find every single way to make that your reality.
Yeah.
So for me, it has to be consistent that work can look this way, and it is looking this way, and it will continue to evolve and be more supportive and caring and still do great work. That's what I want people to listen. Oh, you can do both. It is possible. Take that lie that you've been told away and know that it is possible to show up for the team, to show up for each other, and to also produce great deliverables, great outcomes, great results. at the large enterprise level, and that's our client base, our enterprise, organizations, whether the federal, commercial, or nonprofit space. And so I think people think, oh, this won't work here because it will work, and it does work.
Yeah.
But it starts with you. It really does.
Yeah. I think we can lose sight of that too, that we have actually more agency, to use that word again, but more influence than we think. People notice the behavior we put out into the world.
Yeah. And I would say if you're feeling like saying something, what's the worst that they can say is no. You won't, more than likely, you're not. I mean, don't because you're not going to get fired. But I think we have this fear of stepping up and saying something because, and oftentimes, as you probably know, people don't like conflict. So a little conflict, can change a whole lot of things just by calling someone out if they're being aggressive or they're being toxic. Just bringing it to the forefront because maybe they are having something going on in their life. So it's like, hey, I felt the tension. Is something going on that we can work through or we can help with? And then it's like, it's interesting. We start opening those conversations.
Yeah. It's like, I wonder, sometimes it feels like at work, we don't really see the person. They're kind of just this, avatar, this role, this and like, as opposed to like, if you just suddenly go, oh, that's another person just like me. Yeah, they're annoying me right now or whatever, but that's another person like me. Suddenly you get to a question that's more like, what I noticed some tension in that conversation, what's going on, as opposed to either you're being a jerk, stop it, or even worse, sometimes like kind of going around that person and pointing and telling everyone else, Steve's a jerk. And creating this kind of toxic culture of like constantly pushing blame, and as opposed to like just having a normal human conversation and creating some opportunity for growth, Yeah.
There's this whole thing, concept that I realized where, like people have road rage. It's a very great example. If anyone's listening, you have road rage, it's probably because you see that car. You don't see that there's a person behind that car, right? It's this object. Yeah. And so this thing happens at work. It's seeing this, VP of operations or VP of X, but not knowing that VP of X is also dealing with this thing at home or, who knows, or stress from their boss, who knows, maybe they have an illness, but to maintain their composure because they are the leader, and vice versa, right? You have a team member that was always showing up and then suddenly something's changed. What conversation are you having with them to understand what's going on in their lives? To get to the bottom of it. And so that's kind of, that is how you become more human centric.
Yeah.
Right there.
I love that. Yeah. I think that it's simple, not always easy to kind of step into that. But I think once you do, it gets a little easier each time, want to take a moment to be a little silly here. So if you've listened to my show at all, you hear sound effects at the beginning and end of the show. You noticed our cat. That was, I think, our cat Herman, by the way. We have 3 cats, by the way, but I think that was Herman. I caught a quick glimpse. But I love cat sounds, but I've always invited the guests to make their own sound that we can put somewhere in the episode when we release it. So are you up for making something?
Oh, I am. And I think I have the right thing. It's a sound, but it's more of a phrase or a saying. And it's something my husband does, and I love it whenever he does it. It's the most hilarious thing, but it's look out. Like, look out. I don't know where that's going to go. But
I'll find a spot. So what's the context for that? When does he say that?
So it could be we're driving and something is like literally coming our way, or it's, we found something new on Waze where you can actually record your own voice for the directions. So now it's my voice saying, look out, cops ahead, right?
That's fun.
Oh, yeah. So that's really the context, but it's just whenever he does it, it just gets me laughing. And
that's fun.
That would be my soundbite.
I like that soundbite. And I think that's the key, right? It's like just trying to inject some, one way I always think it's like to make life a little more human is to just find moments of laughter and levity and just a little a little smile during the day goes a long way in the midst of whatever stresses we're dealing with.
So true. So true.
So where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing in the world? What's the best places online?
Best place, LinkedIn, Jēnna Reese. So it's Jēnna and then Reese. And then, of course, you can find us on our my website or on our company website, connectcentric.com. Please reach out. Love to hear from you, hear your thoughts on this episode. Connect on LinkedIn and on our website for sure.
Awesome. Well, Jēnna, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm feeling inspired. I'm feeling inspired and more hopeful about how to help bring more of this human connection out there in the world. Because I think ultimately it's how we're going to not just survive, but thrive in the midst of all the change that's continuing to come our way.
Definitely. TJ, this has been, you are mastering your craft and just so engaging.
Thank you.
Such insightful questions. And I can see why you have an amazing coaching company and that work you're doing is so impactful. So thank you for speaking with me.
Oh, thank you. That was really kind. And we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the DesuckifyWork Podcast. And a huge thanks to Jēnna for bringing warmth and wisdom to the show. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, share, rate, review, subscribe, or consider dropping off the grid to start a dairy farm and raising genetically modified nanny goats who yodel, "Let's desuckify work," every time you milk them. You can follow Jēnna on LinkedIn and check out her company's site at connectcentric.com to catch a glimpse of their human-centric approach to IT consulting. My site and my Substack newsletter are also human and cat-centric. I'm on a mission to make work suck less, and I'd love for you to join me. Want to make that desuckification happen ASAP? Let's set up a free half-hour coaching session. Bye, everyone.